this situation somehow keeps getting crazier as another report has come out that Aaron Rodgers is the perfect fit for the Minnesota Vikings. We're going to be talking about this Bleacher Report article and why this is something that Vikings fans seriously need to start considering here in this video. Now, before we get into this crazy news, we know that 91% of you guys watching right now are not subscribed to the channel. If you're looking for a spot to get all of your Minnesota Vikings news, you're in the right spot. Hit the sub button, join us here on the channel. We are covering everything Minnesota Vikings. But Griffen, we have another insane report. Obviously, you made the video about Aaron Rodgers the other day, and, you know, I was kind of wiping it off at that point. Didn't really think that anything like this would happen. Like, Sports Illustrated, yeah, credible source, but we have another one here, this time from Bleacher Report, and this is what they have on their list of the best fit for 10 players. And Aaron Rodgers here, on 8 out of 10, the best landing spot for him was listed as the Minnesota Vikings. Now, I still find this very, very hard to believe, but you converted me the other day. You made me believe that Aaron Rodgers could potentially be a Minnesota Viking, and that's what we're going to be here to do to you guys watching as well, because we have some very interesting stuff to talk about that really seems like it could be a major possibility, and it's going to come down to the GM and coach and myself and whether we all want to dance together or if it's not in the cards, is what Aaron Rodgers said on the Pat McAfee show the other day based on his situation with the New York Jets. And we've been kind of seeing from an outside perspective of what that whole outcome looks like, and it sure seems more and more like the Minnesota Vikings could be in contention for Aaron Rodgers if they do end up buying him out of his contract and making him a free agent. This is something insane, Griffen. Now, of course, we've seen this report before, but now that we're seeing more like this, now that we're seeing kind of the progression of the Jets head coaching search, how do you think this is really coming down to, you know, the Vikings being a potential target for Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah, when we broke it down earlier, this was before the Jets hired Aaron Glenn. So seeing that Rodgers before said on Pat McAfee's show that, yeah, it's going to come down to who they hire as the coach and the GM. They went with a defensive-minded head coach, and now it's just a matter of who they get as their GM. But having a defensive-minded head coach, that already would probably have Rodgers with one foot out the door with New York. So when looking at the teams where they're going to be playoff ready, they have a good culture established, they have a head coach who's offensive-minded and a quarterback whisperer at that, and they have offensive weapons for him to play with. Really, Minnesota and Pittsburgh were the only teams that were really contenders for that, especially with all the drama they have going on in Pittsburgh, though. That's a whole other situation for another person to cover. But with Rodgers coming into Minnesota, that seems like it would make the most sense just because of that. I'm not saying that I like the possibility or like the idea of him coming to Minnesota, but like I was telling you, the things that could lead up into that and how that could happen with him getting his contract taken away by the Jets or Darnold being an unrestricted free agent and walking that way instead of them having to trade 1-for-1. There's ways where it can be feasible for the Vikings to get him. So it's like it's impossible economically or feasibly to do that. But as far as what he can do for the team, that's where things would get a little interesting, where we know the drama that he brings, whether it's going to be in training camp, just before the draft, or during the season as well, in the media. There's so much at risk where you have that, where the spotlight's going to follow Rodgers wherever he goes. So spotlight will be on Minnesota even more than it already is at this time right now with all the quarterback drama going on. So you're going to amplify that with a rookie quarterback basically in JJ McCarthy. So now he has to sit there and motivate and mentor another guy where JJ McCarthy will have to spend another year behind him, but it could help his overall growth as a whole if he's learning behind one of the best to ever do it. I know people can say what they want about him right now, but don't forget what he was able to do all those years in Green Bay before that Achilles injury.
Yeah, and you know, when you're looking at Aaron Rodgers right now, he's not what he once was, but he still has that mindset. He was still the guy that did it himself. So he's, you know, his experience is there, his mentorship, the availability of mentorship is there, and even when you look at JJ McCarthy, there are still uncertainties about if he will be ready to play. It certainly seems like, and trending towards that he will be able to, but, you know, those surgeries are not easy on the legs. Those surgeries are not easy on young quarterbacks either, so I would much rather see him, if he needs to, even if there's the slightest bit of a chance of re-injury, sit out as long as he has to make sure he's fully healthy if we're banking our future on him. And as you mentioned about what we have as well for what Aaron Rodgers can do, you know, Kevin O'Connell, the entire offense that we've had, like, this is such a good offense that Aaron Rodgers could fit in. You know, it seems like this is something still crazy to say from a few years ago, looking at Aaron Rodgers, comparing him to the Vikings offense and being the one throwing the ball to these guys, but it still is something that I think the Vikings really need to think about. You know, Sam Darnold, likely going to walk, going to be too expensive. Nick Mullins, he's not going to be a starter. Daniel Jones, another option. I think that he certainly will be looking for that starting job elsewhere. Brett Rypien, once again, kind of same thing as Nick Mullins. And then you have J.J. McCarthy, who the injury is still there. We don't know about. And if we can get Aaron Rodgers to sit him behind for a year, even if that spotlight is there, that kind of also takes the spotlight away from J.J. McCarthy and lets him kind of like study in peace, which is something that I would really like to see once again, especially with a guy like Aaron Rodgers who has been there, done that, when the opposite of J.J. McCarthy, got that national championship, but still has not played in the NFL yet. So it is very interesting to kind of think about and look at from an outsider perspective. But we do have more looks at this whole article from Bleacher Report. And says the Vikings theoretically could have an opening if they part with both Daniel Jones and Sam Darnold, while deciding that J.J. McCarthy needs another year as an understudy, or once again, of course, if the injury is still there. Minnesota's a strong enough offensive cast to support Rodgers, while the veteran has stated that he's open to mentoring a young quarterback. And although he has kind of spoken about these young quarterbacks, he still wants to be the starter. That's the ultimate goal. You never want to sit on the bench as a quarterback, especially if, Aaron Rodgers, he wouldn't want that. That's no question about it. But when you're looking as well, you have to think about the offensive line. Sure, we have the weapons, sure, we have the coaching, but the offensive line is something that he's struggled with in New York, and something that he's been, very vocal about. And you can't say it's much better with Minnesota. We saw Sam Darnold in the playoffs, 9 sacks, a playoff record, and Aaron Rodgers would not be very happy with that either. So when you're looking at this one here, Griffen, of course, the mentorship is still a thing. What do you think about him being kind of open to having that his replacement there, even though he still wants to start? Of course, we know he's kind of aging out of the NFL now, but Aaron Rodgers seems like he wants to play as long as he can, and for what we know, this could be still a very long time until he leaves the NFL.
Yeah, it's nice that he's conscious of his age and where he's at this point in his career. He knows that he's probably not going to sign long term with the team. It's going to be for a 1 to 2 year deal. And he knows that whatever team he goes to, if they have someone who's ready to be that next one up in that quarterback to take over the reins from him, he's okay with mentoring him. That's the opposite of what we saw with Brett Favre, where Brett Favre wasn't exactly open to mentoring Rodgers, and that led to a lot of friction. And that's probably why Rodgers played with the chip on his shoulder that he had. But if you have J.J. McCarthy there, where he's learning from Aaron Rodgers, Rodgers is willing to teach him. If you're learning from one of the best, that's someone that you can learn from very valuably. It'd be like someone having, like Jimmy Garoppolo learning from Tom Brady. I know you can say what you want about how that translated, but it still translated into something nevertheless. He still made it to a Super Bowl. And if he had a coach like Kevin O'Connell, maybe he wins that Super Bowl instead of a coach like Kyle Shanahan. Who knows? That's all history that people can say what they want. But if you have Aaron Rodgers in this system, he still has enough gas left in the tank for at least one more. He wants to get another Lombardi, coming to a team where, hey, he thinks that they have the pieces aside from an offensive line that definitely needs help and that's going to be dependent on his success. If he comes in and says, hey, you guys already have Aaron Jones here, that's someone that I have a connection with, that's good, because then you avoid the possibility of having to bring Davante Adams or any of the other Green Bay rejects from that. Not saying Davante Adams is one of those guys, but Alan Lazard and Randall Cobb and all those guys didn't compare to Adams, and Adams is past the prime of his career, whereas you see Jefferson, Addison, Hawkinson, those are going to be great weapons for Rodgers. So if they can bolster down that offensive line for Rodgers, we could see a somewhat, even if it's 3/4 of prime Aaron Rodgers, I'll take it over Sam Darnold at that point, because Rodgers can still sling it, he can still get it, he still has the touch, and he would be on a team that is still ready to win a Super Bowl with our window, while it is closing a little bit, still a bit open.
Yeah, and I think we said about Jimmy Garoppolo as well. In the same instance, you can kind of think about Kevin O'Connell. Although we don't want to see J.J. McCarthy have Kevin O'Connell's NFL playing career, it certainly would still show that mind is still a very good football mind. So with Aaron Rodgers potentially being that mentor to not just J.J. McCarthy, but a lot of these younger guys on this team, there could be a very big outcome of this, whether or not it is in the Aaron Rodgers era, if this is a Minnesota Vikings Aaron Rodgers era. Even if they don't win in that mentorship and that kind of mindset for these players will still be in this instance. And Aaron Rodgers had one more quote about mentoring as well, and he said, I'd mentor the hell out of him if I was playing, and I'd play as well as I could to keep him on the bench. And that's, once again, just goes to show how much Aaron Rodgers has that chip on his shoulder, wants to make sure that, he's still out there, but he still wants to help these guys learn. And we could kind of say the same with Jordan Love. We saw the contract that he got. He's been playing well. A lot of stuff like that kind of turned out good, but it really is right now a different Aaron Rodgers from what was there a few years ago. So It still is a lot to think about, but Griffen, I gotta say, you really changed my mind on the opinion from a few days ago to right now. So let us know what you think in the comments below. Do you think that we could see Aaron Rodgers in Minnesota, or do you think this is all a fairy tale? Let us know what you think, but that's all we got for this video. If you did enjoy, give it a like, hit the sub button as well, but we're signing out. Thank you for watching. Hope you have a great day. See you later.